Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the General Business and Finance meeting of January 7th, 2019 to order. I would like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given by the clerk. If assistance is required, please see the clerk. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Also, the Town of Lincoln Committee and Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. I would like to thank the public for attending the meeting this evening, and I just want to remind everyone our rules for engagement: to please be respectful while others are speaking and to refrain from clapping. Delegations will have 5 minutes to speak, and we are asked to stay focused on the agenda item. So first, I would like to do a roll call. To my left, I have Michael Kirkopoulos, our CAO. I have Councillor Paul McPherson, Councillor Mike Mikulik, Mayor Sandra Easton, Councillor Greg Reimer. In our Corporate and Legislative Services, we have Julie Kirkelos, Town Clerk, or maybe we don't. Oh, you moved. We have Trish Sarnicki, our Deputy Clerk, and Rebecca McKay, our Legislative Coordinator. We have Angela Safani, our Director of Finance and Administration. Greg Hudson, Fire Chief. Kathleen Dale, Director of Planning and Development. Matt Bruder, Associate Director of Planning and Development. Dave Graham, Director of Public Works. Shannon McKay, Director of Community Services. To my right, I have Councillor John Pachariva, Councillor Tony Brunet, Councillor Diane Rajima, and Councillor Adam Russell. Do we have any declarations of interest? Seeing one.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to express an interest with respect to LS 0319, as my father owns property in the proposed boundary expansion area.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brunet. I'm sorry, Pachariva. I didn't even realize I said that. We have one delegation this evening. Please note that delegations may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Our first delegation is Stephanie Hicks, the Executive Director of the Beamsville BIA, to speak regarding Report LS-03-19, Downtown Beamsville Business Improvement Area Proposed Boundary Expansion. Ms. Hicks, if you could please come forward. Oh, and we also have Mr. Ray Darchie. Thank you.
Thank you. We know how to clear a room pretty quickly, obviously. Thanks for inviting us this evening. This is our first time in front of the new council. Congratulations since the election to all of you and the new councilors. And we look forward to working with you in 2019. We had a great year last year. We're looking forward to another great year. First of all, I'd like to thank the town and Agripur for the fantastic decorations downtown. We've had nothing but great comments on them from in-town residents, people out of town, all the way from Toronto down to Niagara-on-the-Lake. I think we probably have the best looking decorations downtown in all of Niagara, easily. So we're going to talk about the expansion, and Stephanie Hicks is going to deal with that today.
Thank you, Chair Darchie, and good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present again. It's very nice to see some familiar faces of council and some new faces. So tonight I'm just going to give you a little snapshot of what we have done in 2018 and where we plan to go in 2019 with this proposed expansion on your docket. So just a quick history of the BIA, and for those that may not know, the BIA stands for Business Improvement Area. The Downtown Beamsville Business Improvement Area was enacted in 1978. The catchment area that was formed and the board of directors that were created, it has changed drastically, and it does not reflect the way the downtown looks today. On February 5th, 2018, the Beamsville BIA started the necessary steps to move us towards expansion. That was also my first day of work here, so this has been almost a one-year project. As you can see, according to the map, the little red section, that is our current downtown area, which I stated does not reflect what people consider to be the downtown area today. To give you some perspective, your neighborhood pizza, which is on King Street, is not a downtown member because it is just outside the catchment area. The 6 key functions that a BIA does have are beautification. So with this expansion in play, we will need to extend our beautification to those new areas in the downtown. Marketing and promotions will have to be super extended as we would be going from a proposed 45 membership, and I just want to be clear, that's membership, not owners, but membership meaning businesses in the downtown, to approximately 120 members in the downtown, not owners. We also have the key function of economic development. We work closely with the Economic Development Office here in the town of Lincoln. Communication, special events. We would like to expand our special events as we put on some in 2018 and expand to the new areas in the downtown. Revitalization and maintenance. Our 2018 accomplishments. We had a successful 2018 farmers market. The current board and myself were tasked with not only a relocation, but also engaging new vendors into the farmers market. So we had a steady 14 members with some cameos of other members. We would like to continue in 2019. We relocated it to the Fleming Center, which was very successful for us as well as the community. We heard nothing but positive feedback in it being a large parking lot, fully accessible. We received a provincial flagship for our event, which was Barrel Blooms. We received this, we were honoring Ontario through Garden Day Canada for our Barrel Bloom project, where we partnered with 9 wineries, 1 brewery, and 7 downtown businesses, as well as our local high school, BDSS. And we had these beautiful barrels downtown. I already know that those, this year would be a goal to be expanded not only to the area, but to include more. We rebranded and became the Downtown Bench, playing on what was already a successful tourism name, and with us being in the center of the Beamsville Bench. So we are now the Downtown Bench, and with our catchphrase, "We saved you a seat." We have a very successful monthly newsletter. We're growing on our social media platforms. We have board growth from 2 members when I started to 6. Our expansion initiative, which is before you today. Lincoln Rerooted was an event that the BIA partnered with the town of Lincoln on this year. It was very successful. Within an hour of the gates being opened, our security had clocked 1,000 people in the gate. During that event, we launched a community chalkboard parquet, which has been super successful. It is now on a weekly cleaning schedule because people write on that chalkboard all the time. And we implemented a Christmas market, again, partnering with the town of Lincoln. And I say partnering with the town of Lincoln quite often because we do it quite often. So much so that in April of 2019, the Downtown Beamsville BIA and Community Services with the town of Lincoln have been selected to be presenters at the 2019 Ontario BIA Association Conference in Ottawa. So these 4 key factors upon myself starting with the BIA was what the board decided should be their strategic plan moving forward, and it was to operate a sustainable, professional, and credible member-driven organization, work with the town and other partners to plan a thriving downtown, attract visitors, shoppers, and businesses to downtown Beamsville, and advocate for the needs of businesses in downtown Beamsville. And we are definitely on the right path to doing that. Moving forward for 2019, we do need to launch our website. There has been some delay in that, and it's just content. We want to make sure it's perfect and getting pictures, and with new businesses coming in, we want to make sure that our directory is a successful function for the new members coming in. We need to host elections, so we have a 2019 slate of directors to present to council in February, but we would host the elections in January. We need to present a 2019 budget. We are going to have an annual general meeting, marketing of downtown and the entire catchment area, and events. So 2019 Farmers Market, Lincoln Rerooted. There's a potential for, and been discussion on a Halloween lower scale event, and continuing the Christmas market and more, as well as continuing our beautification efforts. The board has specific goals in 2019 as well. We would like to have a full functioning board of 9 members, and that leaves some, we want to make sure that we have board members from the north, south, east, and west of our catchment area. We want to have executive officers, so have a sitting chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer, which we do not have right now. We have a chair and a vice chair. A new bylaw, not only with the town of Lincoln, but also internally. We would like to have standing committees, being marketing and events, finance, beautification, and governance. Also, each committee having its own chair, chairing those committees, and downtown members will have the ability, even if they're not a board member, to sit on those committees and have their input. We need a constitution. We don't have one. Policies and procedures, in-house finances. Although we're grateful that the town handles our finances right now, we would like to bring those in-house, and one-on-one meetings with all members. So that's it for the presentation, and does anyone have questions?
Mary Stin?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The only, I don't really have any big questions except one about, is the Strawberry Festival going to be on your list of events at some point in time? Or something similar to that?
Through you, Chair. It has been discussed with the board as well as with community services in the town of Lincoln. I can't commit to that for 2019, but it's certainly been discussed. I know it is missed drastically based on a survey that was conducted in 2018 of April. So it's definitely something moving forward that we would be discussing.
Okay. Now, more akin to this report, I'm really interested to know what the increase in revenue is as a result of the change in the catchment area. Can you tell us that yet? Through you, Madam Chair.
Through you, Chair. We can't tell you that yet. The board has to decide on what the 2019 budget looks like, because that will determine the levy being collected. We do have a finance meeting on January 17th to determine a potential 3 different budget tiered options. But until we have that, we do not know what our levy or budget looks like for 2019.
And through you, Madam Chair, is your assumption that you will be operating without town support in terms of the primary source of revenue? Do you have any idea what that looks like at all? I'm sure you've done some preliminary work. I'm just pushing.
Through you, Chair. Currently, we have an $8,000 levy, so, and that's through the businesses. It's not, there have been some things that the town does support us on as far as beautification efforts. So on our tiered budget perspectives, we do have those line items having dollars from our levy into it as opposed to any town support.
Okay. And Madam Chair, when would you be expecting to present that budget then?
Through you, Chair, we are anticipating that our 2019 budget and slate of officers go to town council in February, probably late February.
Okay. I remember when I read this report initially, Madam Chair, that it wasn't clear to me whether the BIA budget fit with our schedule for budget. But because this exercise was very much, it hinged significantly on future revenues. That's why I'm asking the question. I think it's very relevant, Madam Chair, for in terms of this report. So do we know whether or not that the budgets come together at the right time? Do we have any idea about that? It seemed like we were operating on maybe different calendar years.
Okay, thank you, Mary Stin. I'll turn this over to Paul Deaney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a point of clarification, so what does happen is the BIA sets their budget, and then they come back to the town and present that budget, and town council then approves that budget. And how it's sort of divvied out with the members, it's based on assessment. So you can't really say what the revenue would be. It's what the budget is set, and then that is divvied out amongst the membership based on their assessed value. Now, in terms of timelines along our budgets, it would be fine. I mean, it doesn't really necessarily affect what their budget is, doesn't necessarily affect our process. But we are still in time because 2019 assessments have not been sent out yet to memberships. So there is still time.
Okay, I think I have a better idea of how it works. And we're not really, and Madam Chair, through you, we're not really, this is for information, essentially, right? This is for information. I'm just wanting to make sure that we understand our governance responsibilities.
Did you have something more to add? No, you look like you had something more, okay. All right. Is that good, Mary Stone?
I want to know what our governance responsibilities are.
Is there someone that can answer to that? I'm looking to staff, okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I understand the question correctly, in terms of the question about the report this evening,
Well, this report to me and future activity really, I don't see them as different because the expansion was based clearly on the need for greater revenue. So I just want to, Madam Chair, if it is your decision that I need to ask a different question at a different time, please rule. I just wanted, I want to know the net benefit of this, is what I'm trying to figure
Okay,
out.
I think our CAO has some comments that he would like to add at this point.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think to the mayor's question, and I believe Councillor McPherson was also going to chime in on this particular point. But looking at the cycle of our budget versus the cycle of when this expansion will go through, there will continue to be some support from a financial perspective that the BIA will be seeking. And so I think our objective 2 years ago was to make them self-sustaining or as self-sustaining as possible, and I think they're well on their way to do that. But from a governance perspective, assistance through the budget process will be what the BIA is seeking this year. Now, I think we need to go away. We need to work with Ms. Safani, determine from the perspective of what we hope to gauge or what we hope to gain in additional levy dollars and how that aligns to the strategy and the plan that the BI has moving forward. But that will be the exercise that we go through, and you'll see as part of the budget process.
Okay, well, I mean, Madam Chair, I just also want to say that, I mean, it is really quite amazing what you have accomplished in this past year. Absolutely no question about it. Who could have imagined that so many great accomplishments could have taken place? So I really do see this as the future road ahead, so thank you very much.
Okay, we have, Mary Stone, if you could turn your microphone off, please. I have Councillor McPherson next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would just add that to our CAO's comments that, yes, we do absolutely expect that there will be support by the town in the near future, or at least with this budget. We don't expect that we will be completely self-sufficient yet. And I would just also echo the mayor's comments. Congratulations to Chair Darchie and to our executive director Hicks. That this is a very proud moment tonight to be standing here with a successful expansion. I don't know how many people try to expand and are not successful in various towns, and and also acknowledge the blocking and tackling that from our economic development officer in sync with Stephanie in going to many of the businesses and explaining the whole expansion process and how that would impact them. So congratulations, outstanding, great to be here with a expansion on our horizon. And I think it is a great step towards that long-term sustainability that we've got, and that we will be down the near road standing on our own 2 feet. So we're moving in the right direction. Nice job.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any? I don't see anyone on my notification here. Oh. Councillor Rajima?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I better say thank you very much for all your hard work too, because obviously there's huge things happening and people are talking about it everywhere, how great our downtown is looking. This, I've heard about, let's expand our BIA boundary for many, many years, and now it's happened. So thank you very much and congratulations. And, I think it's been said before, but I'm going to say it again. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll take a moment also just to congratulate you. This was very bold. When I first saw the drawing, it was like, wow, it's huge. But by the numbers, obviously you had buy-in, and the people see the benefit of it and the businesses in town. And great work. I'm looking forward to the next year, to all the exciting things that you've got planned coming. So, and I have to say something on a side note. I hope everyone will be okay with this. You've got to go up to Camden and see our little library, because we were inspired by the barrels downtown. And we actually have a barrel that is a library in the downtown Camden core. So you might want to take a look at it. Have you seen it? Excellent.
It's doing well on social media.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much. If you'd like to take a seat back in the audience, thank you. So moving on to our consent agenda, we have none. On our regular agenda, we are now considering item 6.1 LS-03-19, Downtown Beamsville Business Improvement Area Proposed Boundary Expansion. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none? There being no further discussion, we will require a mover for the motion. Oh, Maryston? We are now going to vote on that motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that is carried. We are now considering item 6.2, LS-01-19, 2018 Municipal Election General Overview and Accessibility Report. Are there any questions from council? Maryston?
Madam Chair, I have a few items that I'd like to address, and the first one is the accuracy of the voters list. I don't know who the appropriate person is to, the clerk?
Julie Kirkowicz, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the accuracy of the voters list, you're speaking to the impact list that we are provided? Is that what you're referring to? So we're mandated to use that list, as you know. That was explained to all of the candidates. And we do our best to update that. It's a mixture of what MPAC has. I think you'll find that it was updated as much as it could be. We know and we have concerns as clerks across Ontario about that list, and I have a meeting this week with AMCTO to bring those concerns forward, and also to let the ministry advisor know that I would like to bring a motion forward at another time to request that council endorse using the Elections Ontario list rather than the MPAC list. We have found that over the years since the early 2000s that there's issues with the MPAC list.
Thank you very much. I'm sure when you bring the motion forward, we can speak more about the implications. Madam Chair, on page 17 of the report, within the first paragraphs, under internet voting, there is some discussion here about extending the internet voting period to begin sooner and/or end later in the election timeline, but before voting day. And there's two parts to my question. One is, has consideration being given between the short period between internet voting and paper voting? And is it a clean division? So if I have voted electronically, it's registered that immediately, and it would not allow me to vote again. Okay, thank you very much for that. And secondly, certainly internet voting was very popular. However, the sooner it begins, the greater the impact on campaign strategy. To the point that the more popular it becomes, I guess more dramatically, we're going to have to change our methodology. Do you have any idea what the impact might be?
So I'd like to just start off by saying that we are mandated at a certain time of when internet or any kind of voting can happen within the Elections Act. And so we have to abide by that no matter what. And that refers to advance voting and when that can actually happen. So usually with the internet voting, that's in advance of actual voting day. And we also have as you know, the special voting locations that can happen in advance of voting day. That aside, the second part to your question is in regards to, can you just
Well,
repeat
I mean,
that?
it's not your issue, but clearly we have parallel processes going on here.
Yes.
And we're going to have to, candidates are going to have to have a totally different orientation or strategy seeking methodology in order to remain competitive throughout it, because in many ways, that worked against us.
So through you, Madam Chair, just to address that. So I'd like to come back also closer to the election with an updated bylaw of when signs can be put out. Usually there's a date that candidates can register, and I'd like it to make that date upon registration is when you can start advertising and what that looks like. So I'd like it to be more clear because it isn't right now, and when you
Okay.
look at the bylaw. And I think that would help to clarify some matters of how soon you can campaign after you register.
Right. Now, you've all heard me complain about the fact that the last year of the term ends up being almost tanked because of the election. And it really is very disturbing to me. And the fact that we have new staff as well. It was very difficult for everyone, I think, this election. I'm trying to pick up from previous staff and bringing all of these changes into place. However, I want to recant part of my impression because I believe that the election, at least it's my observation, that the election process is becoming very complicated now, and that one of the advantages that we had this time around was the fact that members of the senior management team were actually used as part of those key positions. So if there were shenanigans that were going to be going on at the polling stations, which we have had in the past, it was highly unlikely that people were going to get away with that this time around. So it doesn't look to me like you've factored the SMT contribution into, is it in there? Oh my goodness. Okay, well that's great. But I certainly can see the value of having members of the senior management team involved because of their background and their confidence in dealing with the public, capability of dealing with the public. So I'll just leave that as a comment, and I'll be happy for you to bring forward anything to do with signs as well. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. It's a good report.
Is your microphone off? Councillor Pachariva, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, through you to, I guess, Ms. Kirklos. Thank you very much for the report. I like the fact of the vote anywhere ballot options. I know campaigning, there was a lot of people, especially on Mountain Street South, that were quite upset at the fact that they had to drive to the Legion. They drove right past a polling station, and they were bothered by that. But having said that, in that area, there was a lot of residents that didn't receive a voting card. So they didn't receive a voting card, they're not on high-speed internet. Now, I think the problem is they received the mail in West Lincoln. So there seems to, was a conundrum of sorts of anyone, say from Yonge Street South, so the real outliers. But, I mean, you know, when you're going door to door and you're campaigning and they go, well, I'm not voting, all right? Because, so wondering how we might address that and going forward. So I think the Vote Anywhere will help do that, but, you know, making sure that they get their cards. And then the second point, with all of the advertising, and appreciate that, was a new resident that, and I made a note about it, had moved to Welland, was part of the election. And he had said to me, now whether this is true or false, or, you know, probably missed it, was there any maps published anywhere, like in the newspaper, online, showing the demarcation of the boundaries? Because a lot of people, I don't know if the other candidates found this, like, you know, not knowing where they are. Now, whether they don't read the mail or look online, or, I just find it rather strange that would be a
Okay,
response, so.
so you're looking for, did they have the ward map information?
Yeah, do we post that in the
So they know
paper?
what
In the
ward they're
paper,
in.
yeah.
Through to the clerk, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the maps were posted online. You could find them online. And also in our advertisements, there was a map that was provided. Yep. In response to your other question, the voting letters and through MPAC, again, we received those through MPAC. There was plenty of advertising as well that we had in advance to ask people to get the word out that they could register in advance if they didn't receive their voter's card. So we tried to get that word out as much as possible through ads, through radio, and this was also 12 municipalities that joined together to help get that word out to people to get on the voters list ahead of time. And they could also do that at the voting locations as well on voting day.
Okay, sufficient, Counselor? Yes? Okay. Counselor McPherson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would also agree that it's a very thorough, good report. Disappointed we didn't get 40% of our residents voting. You know, I think there was a lot of effort to get people out to vote, various ways to vote, and would have been nice to see that number jump over the 40% mark. I had the same thought around the online voting as Mayor Easton, in that, you know, it really changes your campaign. You know, there was many doors I went to that is really kind of, you know, in the old campaigning was the heart of the campaign, in that, you know, those first 2 weeks of October, and it was, well, we've already voted. So I would selfishly support a condensed online voting period. You know, I'm not sure we need 2 weeks, you know, so, you know, I would think that, you know, I certainly don't want to be out there 1st of July, you know, knocking on doors, but, you know, I think it did impact some of us that were, and, you know, as we know in this kind of community, a ground game is generally going to get you voted. So you got to be out knocking on the doors. I also agree with Councillor Pachariva on the Vote Anywhere would be fabulous, because I also had, you know, several people, why are you making me go to, you know, this, I'm going right by this one, and, you know, you're making me go up to Balls Falls, or whatever it was. So if we were able to do that, and that would be, you know, a simple answer to anybody saying, you know, where do I go to vote? Go anywhere. You just go to a poll, you know. So that would be ideal. I do have a question about the returns, and maybe a question of, I'll just compare 2014 to 2018. So 2014, we know our results in 10 or 15 minutes. And in 2018, it's over an hour. So maybe if you could, you know, explain what happens after the election closes, to get us those results? And is that just this particular year that's what happened? Can we expect the results in a 15 to 30-minute period, or is that just not going to happen anymore?
Through you, Madam Chair. So for 2014, I can speak to what had happened then. There was one check balance, whereas in 2018, we made sure to check it 3 times to make sure that we didn't have to go back and correct any information that was advertised differently. So we made sure that there was 3 check balances before we posted those numbers. Now, I will tell you that I fully support the three checks just for accuracy alone. That is my main concern as a clerk running an election, is just accuracy and integrity of the information that we're putting out. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that the numbers that were put out were about, I believe it was within 11 minutes after the polls closed at 8 o'clock, we had numbers coming up online posted to the public, and those were the advanced voting numbers. Those were also the internet numbers. As you know, we were waiting for the tabulators to come back from the locations, which were done actually quite quickly, quicker than I ever expected, and we still managed to have those 3 check balances for accuracy. So, for my main concern, it's all about accuracy, but I get that everybody wants it more timely, and I believe that you might be speaking to the last tabulator that got posted online. I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to, but we had those numbers getting out within 10 minutes.
And the answer I'm getting is it's going to take an hour, the next go around. The numbers were coming, but they weren't the final results.
No, so with the next time around, if it is a vote anywhere, and we were doing it by paper copy, so we had to wait for those tabulators to come. Now, if we do the vote anywhere and we are literally live striking those voters off, that's actually immediate. So you'll get the numbers a lot quicker.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Ojima?
Thank you, Chair Timmers. A comment about the ward maps. I think every time I've campaigned, I get people saying they don't know what ward they're in, and that's the way it goes. I think through the 4 years, I think I even forget what my ward boundaries are sometimes. As long as it's posted somewhere, and people know where to, if they go looking for it, they're going to be able to find it. But it's really hard for people to remember what ward they're in. As long as they know when they go to vote, right? That's important. Yeah.
Can I just address that?
Sure.
So for those who did receive their voter notification cards, the poll location and their ward number was on those voter notification cards.
Yeah.
And so if they were to have come to Town Hall or any other location, we could have told them where it is in their ward and what location that they're going to.
Yeah, and they can figure that out by going online as well, right? Yeah.
And they could have looked it up online as well.
Yeah. It's hard. And I think our as far as total voter participation, I think it went from 37 to 39% and that's quite an accomplishment. Really, 2% is a lot because it was staggering around for a long time. 35.5, 36, 36.2, 36.7, 36, and so that's really quite an accomplishment. That's good. And I have a comment about page 17 that the mayor was talking about internet voting. I remember thinking, okay, why are we cutting off internet? Did we stop it a week before? Did we stop it a week before voting day?
Yeah, so we stopped it at our last
days.
advanced vote,
Yeah.
which gave our elections team time to close that and then prepare the lists that were going out to each poll. Those lists included people who voted already. They were already stricken off the list. So people who were going to the poll, if they showed up and said, I want to vote, we already had them as you already voted. So that's why there was a couple of days in
gap.
between.
No, that's good because I know there were problems in a few municipalities.
Well, that's the other
right?
thing too.
So
is
then
that
when that happened, I thought, okay, there's an advantage right there, so I'm glad that you did that.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of municipalities who continued with the internet voting up until 8 o'clock on the day of, they were the ones that had the issues in that it was crashing, the server was crashing, so.
Yeah, yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
I have Counselor Mikulik.
Hi there. Through you, Chair, to the people that organized this election, I thought it was well planned. I thought it was excellent. It was carried through fantastic. I thought that coming in under budget, I think the taxpayers are appreciative of that as well. That should be acknowledged. I think that I also can say that I tested the system, me personally. I voted online, and I immediately raced to Town Hall to try to vote again. She wouldn't let me. She already knew that I'd voted. She crossed me off the list and said, "Sorry, Mike, you can't vote again." So I wasn't going to because that would be illegal. However, I thought they were doing their job. I thought it was very well done. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I'm not seeing anyone here. I had some of the same comments. I thought it was very well run. The online voting, I think we need to look at the timing of that as well, because I ran into the same thing. I had 2 weeks of campaigning and majority had already voted at the doors. I like the vote anywhere. I think that's fantastic. That will really make it easy for voters. They don't have to worry about where am I going. They just take their card and go, and I think that's a great idea. So I'm really excited for that. So anyway, seeing no other comments or questions with regard to this report, I require a mover for the motion. I believe it was Councillor Russell. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that is carried. So we are now considering item 6.3, LS-02-19, Citizen Advisory Committee Review. Will that be the clerk as well? Reporting on that? Okay. Thank you. Go ahead. Do the motion.
So I just wanted to have a couple of words on the Citizen Advisory Committee. As you know, we updated our procedural bylaw, and in that it reflected the Citizen Committee advisories, and that we would need to officially appoint council members to be part of the citizen advisory committees, and then have a terms of reference, and then what that looked like. So within our procedural bylaw, it does state that there is one councillor per citizen advisory committee, and council would appoint a councillor to sit on those committees when they are approved. So knowing that we had interest for an active age-friendly committee, as well as the active transportation committee, and there's been a lot of great work come out of that committee, but it wasn't officially recognized as a council advisory committee. So this is why this report was being brought forward, and I did mention it when the procedural bylaw was going forward as well. So in that, we are recommending that these two committees be approved, and then we can start advertising for those particular positions. I do want to make special mention for the Active Transportation Committee, and that there are members that are currently a part of that, and I did make note in the report that we will seek their input to if they want to continue, and then work from there. So in terms of advertising, and if there's any opportunities for other folks.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Questions from council?
Thank you.
Councillor McPherson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a very thorough report. My question is, I don't know if I missed it, but from a selection committee standpoint, to put together a group to interview and select. Is that still to come?
So Councillor McPherson, through you, Madam Chair. So once we approve these committees and we appoint a councillor to sit on those committees, we will ask that councillor, and this will be in conjunction with clerks, to go ahead and advertise for those memberships to be part of that committee, and then you'll be part of the interview process for that.
So it's, I think in the past, we had a ad hoc committee of counselors that selected the people that would sit on these committees. So you're thinking that that's going to change?
That is how we've presented it. Now, if it's council's wish, we can certainly take a look at that, because we have other committees that we are currently recruiting for as well. So that's something that we can take back as staff.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Rajima?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question about diversity in our community and on our citizen advisory committees. Are we doing anything, and can we do anything in our advertising for these committees to encourage diversity in our membership?
Through you, Madam Chair. So as you know, we have to meet certain requirements under how we recruit for people. So there is wording in there already in terms of accessibility and all of that. So I can't specifically ask for certain folks to come forward. I mean, it's based on what's the interest of the community and whose interest on serving on behalf of their community. So, we're open to anybody that's in the community that wants to serve the public and whatever that looks like.
Yeah, of course we are. So that was just curious, though. It's a tough question, but how do you go about doing that? Because we have a diverse community, and it's becoming more and more diverse. So, and I have a question about something on page 26 that I didn't really understand. Maybe I'm reading it out of context. Page 26 of Schedule D, which is the Citizens Handbook, which is page 51 of the report. At the top, guidelines on voting. Only members can vote unless excused by a pecuniary interest, which is then considered a negative vote. Am I reading that out of context? Because if you excuse yourself from voting because of pecuniary interest, my understanding is you're just moved out, but it's not considered a negative vote. Is that incorrect? Or am I reading something out of context?
So there was guidelines from multiple municipalities that I currently looked at for citizen advisory committees and handbooks and guidelines and what that looks like in terms of members who sit on the committee. This is something that was common, but again, this is administrative. So if it's council's wish that we remove that part from the guideline, we can certainly do that.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering I guess from a Robert's Rules perspective, I mean, this isn't how we typically have conducted our meetings.
So Robert's Rules is a guiding principle to how we conduct ourselves and how citizen advisory committees conduct themselves, but this is administrative in nature. We can certainly amend that if that's council's wish.
Okay, so,
Okay.
thank you. I think it should be amended, because I think that that could cause problems in situations where there's a number of people that are declaring a pecuniary interest. In a small committee, let's say there's 5 and 2 or 3 of them have to declare for some reason, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so 2 things have come up. So council needs to decide if we want an ad hoc committee as done in the past, and that's something we are going to have to make a decision on, as well as if you're a council member, are you a voting member? So that's something, you know, do we want to give direction to staff on what you were just asking, Councillor Rajima? How should we handle that? Oh, she's off, okay. Okay. Right.
Sorry, Councillor Rajima was asking, through you, Madam Chair, that if someone abstains, any member of the committee,
Right.
that it's considered a negative vote if it's for a pecuniary interest. So there's now 3 questions, I believe, on the floor for council to discuss.
So through you through to the clerk, how do we handle this then? What do we need to do
So a
here?
member we're speaking of are the citizen committee members. We're not necessarily talking about the councillor member. The councillor member doesn't hold a vote on this committee as it influences the things that the Citizen Advisory Committee are doing. Those votes are brought to committee, the standing committees. So you have to, the Citizen Advisory Committees are citizen-driven. So whatever comes out of that is then brought forward to this table to decide on. And that's where council should be voting, not at the Citizen Committee advisory level, if that helps.
Okay. So as far as the ad hoc interview committee, what are we doing with that? Do we need a motion to put that on the table, or no? Councillor McPherson? Sure. You were the one that brought that up?
I'd like to hear from those that were on the ad hoc committee.
Okay.
Did it work?
I was on the ad hoc committee last term, so I participated in, you know, the application process and the choosing of the members, and it seemed to work, but I'll turn it over to Councillor Bernay. Would you like to comment as well? I don't know how we're lined up here.
Right now, we're still lined up with people making comments.
Yes.
for the general report.
Right.
And then once we get through all the comments, then we can come back to the actual amendments of motion.
Okay.
Let's get everybody.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, we'll go back to, so next person is Mary Stone.
Oh, Madam Chair, through you to the clerk, I need a little more clarification. We have statutory committees, and that's how we refer to them, and that's how they're in the procedural bylaw. And then, in addition to that, we have the library committee, and we have the committee of adjustment, and they don't have a particular title. They're just additional committees that we sit on. Is that correct?
So
They're
the
not
library-
statutory.
The library board is of a different entity, so they operate on their own. They're under the Public Libraries Act. That's not
Yes.
something that we control or administer.
Okay.
But there is a councillor member that sits as a liaison on that
Okay.
committee. So that's not part of this.
Okay.
The Committee of Adjustment is legislated, and that is, that's under the Planning Act itself.
And that's, so that should,
That is legislated.
so we don't expect to see that under here?
No.
It's legislated, but it's not a statutory committee.
That is a statute, it's legislated under the Plannings Act, which is
Is it called a
statutory.
statutory committee?
It is a statutory committee.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, we're talking about the citizen advisory
I
committees.
know that, but
Mhm,
I want
yeah.
to be absolutely clear, because I have
Yep.
questions about what isn't on here, not
Right.
what is on here.
Yep.
So then we have regional committees, and they're just regional committees, right?
Well, they're administered through the region, not through us.
Okay, but they
Right.
may ask us for membership.
Right.
So they are partially administered through us, through you, Madam Chair.
They're administered when we do the selection of committees.
Right.
As you know, we just went through that process, but
Right.
it's not part of our Town of Lincoln Citizen
Right.
Advisory Committee
Okay.
structure.
All right, so now we have Citizen Advisory Committee, and it was my understanding in talking with you about this, that this was a way to bring in a couple of committees that had kind of formed outside of any of those, that framework. And that's great, and it appears to do just that. And so I'm wondering, is there an opportunity to create other citizen advisory committees? And did you consider others, and were they rejected?
So I considered what the interests were brought forward, and age-friendly is one that is trending right now, and has been for quite some time. With the senior population on the rise, this committee would be of great value to the town as well as to the region as a whole. Also the active transportation, they've provided, as you know, a great work that has happened so far. And active transportation is also something that is being looked at by all Ontario municipalities across, not just Ontario, but across Canada and the world itself. So that is something that we wanted to also get a better understanding of the terms of reference and gain its better structure through this
Okay.
report.
So as we go along, there would be opportunity for other
Yes.
committees to be struck, which is good. And, okay. I just want to make sure that I completely understand this, because I know that, and Councillor Pachariva, you're going to have to, and Councillor Majima, in the previous, not in the last term, but the previous term, and before that, it seemed to me, it was the perception of the community, that citizen advisory committees had been completely disbanded. And that there weren't any more committee, and that's how we lost the museum committee, for example. And so there were committees that just seemed to disappear. So I'm encouraged that we're actually going about this in this way, because we do need to have members of our community, like, provides another level of input, Madam Chair, another way to have input. And is that your intention, that we would be looking for good reasons to add more committees to this?
So through you, Madam Chair. Absolutely, Mayor Easton. So as we look at trends that are happening, as we look at the population, demographics, what the needs are of the community, that's what drives these citizen advisory committees. And so with also public engagement and outgoing to the community to see what the interests are, that gives us an idea of where we need to meet those gaps in the community. And this is a great way to do that.
Okay, that's great. I really appreciate your explanation, and I'm pleased to see it. I think it fits in very well with our goals and objectives and our vision, for sure, and I look forward to seeing it as it evolves. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Mayor Easton, can you turn off your mic? Next, we have Councillor Pachariva.
Thank you, Chair Timmers. With respect to these two committees, having been on active transportation with Councillor Brunei and in its infancy, and I still see the committee in its infancy, there's a lot of things to do, and I think by limiting the committee to just one councillor, we'll lose some of that momentum that we've helped establish. We've come to the point where we're looking at everything now through the town through an active transportation lens. I mean, this was something that wasn't on the landscape 4 years ago. It's been in effect for about 2 years. Tony and I have been involved in this. And I look at it, I get the standardization we're looking for, but sometimes there's exceptions, right? I think something in its infancy, and I go back to when Councillor McPherson came on in the BIA, him and I both sat on that for a while. There's still a lot of things that this committee's trying to achieve. The bronze cycling designation, the cycle-friendly community designation. We're still viewing the transportation master plan. The slow roll bike event that's taking place in June that we've been working on, that the committee has still been meeting monthly. I think this committee needs to continue to meet monthly. I think meeting bi-monthly would be a disservice to not only the work that's been done in the past, but also those lay members that have been sitting on there. And even, you know, putting a hard stop of 2 hours. Sometimes your meetings go quicker and sometimes they don't, given the agenda that night and the flavor for dialogue. And I don't think we want to stifle that. I think, and I respect the standardization, but sometimes when you look to standardize too much, you stifle creativity. You stifle support. You stifle new ideas. So I would further recommend too, if we're going to start this age-friendly committee, we have 2 counselors on there. Because you really need the counselors, and maybe it was just our experience, but the counselors are the ones that that tend to start the dialogue, tend to raise those questions, especially with something new. You know, the goal of active transportation is our committee members, that they stand up and they become the chair and the vice chair. And I think we'll get that out of that. But I still think that there's more work to be done, and I think eliminating to one is a disservice. And again, I'll let Tony talk to more, but there's some other things too, so.
Okay, so not a question in there, just
It is I think there should be
some
two.
recommendations that you
yeah.
would like to see 2 counselors on that committee. The start time, I think, is just a guideline. If you go over, you go over. And maybe I'll turn it over to our clerk
Okay.
and if she has some comments for you.
So we can address those through the terms of reference. And if you wanted to meet, monthly versus bi-monthly, we can address that through the terms of reference, and that's administrative in nature. We can make that change. As to the start time and end time, that's because, we're also considering, we're a staff of 3. And so we're also meeting with other citizen advisory committees. We're also with legislative committees, and we're also with standing committees and council. So this helps to keep things on track. And the discussion points that are strictly on the agenda, I get what you're saying, that you don't want to stifle creativity, but we also have to be cognizant of those who are actually sitting on that committee as well.
Okay? Good, Counselor? Fair enough. Next. Counselor Rajima.
Thank you, Chair Timmers. I had actually hit my button earlier on in response to a question, but I didn't intend to be in queue for this, so.
Okay. Counselor Brunei?
Thank you, Chair Timmers. So I don't want to get on a soapbox, but I just want to put a couple things in context for the 3 of the new members. As Councillor Patriba alluded, we launched a active transportation committee in the fall of 2016. We basically started from scratch. There were no terms of reference. There were no guidelines. So we've gone through some many pitfalls to get to where we are today. We've had some great citizen appointments, Bowles, Chettle, Gross, Jaworski, and Craig, and had some great assistance from staff. But some of the issues that we've had over the last 2 years is exactly what the clerk is referring to, that sometimes throughout the year when there's heavy lifting to be done by staff, it becomes difficult for this advisory committees to continue to move forward with their agenda. So, we used Megan Burbick extensively in surveys and the Bronze Friendly application. I want to thank Director Dale and Director Graham for allowing Mr. Bruder and Mr. Neubauer to be actively involved, but they have full-time jobs. So I'm really glad to see that it looks like there's a movement here in this report that I guess the lead moving forward is going to be CS, Community Services. At least that's my understanding. So I think that's good, and I know Matt Bruder in planning and Walter and all those people will continue to be involved, but they have full-time jobs, and to expect them to be there at 10 o'clock at night, every 4th Thursday has been sometimes problematic. Diane Campbell, James Van Ruin, they're taking the notes, but we have we have been successful in moving a lot of these things in transportation master plan and parks master plan. And as Councillor Patrick alluded, a lot of the things, and former councillors, previous councillors will understand that a lot of times when we talk about planning initiatives, we're looking at things now through an active transportation lens that we never experienced before. So I am very concerned moving forward that we're at a crossroads where this committee could go one of two ways. Connie Groves, unfortunately, has moved away. She's been a huge proponent for our committee. We're going to need to fill that position, and we've lost a little momentum over the last 3 or 4 months during the election. So I'm very concerned on which way this committee is going to go. So I don't know where I'm going to be as we move forward with this, but I would like to, if I could, is this the appropriate time? Pardon? What?
Okay. Okay, so we have an amended motion. So Councillor Bernay, you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Chair Timmers. So based on kind of what, you know, I'm speaking about, you know, we've done a lot of things, and we know what we've done over the last 2 years, and, you know, we've been sending 2 representatives from the committee to the Bike Summit. Bike Summit, it runs for 2 days in Toronto, so that means a hotel and registration. So that alone, if we're going to continue to send 2 representatives to the Bike Summit, is well over $1,000. So in the report, the recommendation was a budget of $2,500. We received an honorable mention on the Bronze Award. We want to get that back in the queue. We're doing a bike event, which we did last year. We launched a bike event for the first time. We'll have some sponsorship from that, but there'll be some costs. So quite honestly, $2,500 is just not a good number. So if I could, I'd like to move a friendly amendment to report LS 0219 to include a request to increase the Active Transportation Committee budget from the $2,500 that's in the report to include an additional $5,000 for a total of $7,500. Thank you, Chair Timmers.
Okay, so, did you have comment? Okay, all right. I was just wondering if there would be discussion around that amendment. Okay, so you've heard the amendment to the original motion. So I need a mover for this motion. Oh, somebody's. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We're losing things here. What did you say? Okay, Councillor Rajima.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So would this be a motion, just for clarification, a motion to put this into the budget for discussion?
Through you, Madam
That's
Chair.
my question.
Councillor, all these are proposed additions and will be ratified through the budget process. So I think to answer your question, yes, it will go forward to the budget process, but the amounts that are put forward there, the process for recruitment is going to start. And so it's more of a matter of fact and an approval process than it is a deliberation.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Comments or questions to this motion with the amendment? Mary Ston?
Madam Chair, I would, I certainly hear what Councillor Brunet and Patrick are saying about this committee, and my mind is moving a little bit even further now, because when you look at this issue of looking at something through a certain lens, when you have a special committee, you're trying to bring attention to an important issue, which is exactly what happened. And I think some of the outcomes were far beyond what you would expect from an ad hoc committee, really, in terms of their value. And then, so when you look further down the road, then there's more, there's more substantial work to do. But I also get the feeling that under the current structure, it may not be sustainable because it needs to become intrinsic so that the lens is there all the time in every committee that you talk about. When you meet with Public Works, that transportation agenda is transportation agendas that, I'm not sure if I'm 100% correct with this, but it's how my mind is looking at this and looking at it in terms of sustainability, because the outcomes are so important, you don't really want to lose them. And I know the idea, we need to be more efficient with our time and with the staff's time. I also can see how maybe, at least in this next year, we need to bear down a little bit and help this committee do more of its work and see what that agenda is going to look like, and maybe even reevaluate it again. I support the things that are being said. I think a little modification won't hurt, because there is good work being done. And until we get that lens clearly in our, until we start to do that is a very natural thing. I would support I would support the amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Ston. I have someone else in the queue here. Okay, it just went blank.
Maybe they changed their mind?
Did someone turn off? Were you in the queue, Adam? No? Okay. All right.
I shut mine off, and it may have just been a timing of it.
Okay.
I'm
So
trying to be compliant.
is there anyone else that would like to make some comments regarding this amendment? Seeing no one? Then I need a mover to this motion. Okay, I need a mover to the amendment. Counselor McPherson. And now I need a mover to the,
I have a few other amendments kind of that have come up. through
okay,
discussion.
okay, so,
The first one is the ad hoc.
yes, okay, right. Okay, so
Would anyone like to put that on the floor?
would anyone like to move the motion to have the ad hoc interview committee as we did last term?
I need somebody to actually bring it forward as an amendment,
Okay,
and then someone to move it.
okay, so would someone like to bring forward that amendment? Okay, go ahead, Counselor Russell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, just for my own information, maybe for the new councilors as well, what's the benefit of having an ad hoc committee versus the committee variation that, or the one that was proposed with a council member and the clerks? Like, just for sake of voting, I just want to make sure, from my own standpoint, that I'm making the correct decision. I'd just like to know the benefits of maybe each from whomever wants to
Okay.
answer that.
That's a good question.
Through you,
To the
Madam Chair.
clerk.
Some people are used to that, some people aren't. Quite frankly, the reason why I proposed it this way is so that the member that actually sits on that Citizen Advisory Committee would be the member participating with clerks to help recruit for those members that are sitting on that Citizen Advisory Committee. With an ad hoc committee, you might not necessarily be the one for that committee, even though you are appointed to a Citizen Advisory Committee. You may not be the person that sits on that committee to recruit for those members. I'm not certain of what the process was prior, but going forward, this is why I proposed it this way. The ad hoc committee, I guess, just brings a bigger lens to the certain councillor members that are around this table to recruit for people in the community. However, with clerks and staff, as well as that the councillor member that is appointed to that Citizen Advisory Committee, we would be helping with that process. But the ad hoc committee, that's, if council wishes to do that, then that's up to council.
Okay. Counselor Rajima, I see you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was on the ad hoc committee last time. I think Councillor Brunet was as well, and Councillor Timmers was, and I was on the year before too. And I think there were about 5 of us, and it was just really people. It was councillors that wanted to do it. It was like, do you want to be part of this ad hoc committee? Sure, sounds great. And we really enjoyed the interview process. We got to know people in the community, and as we went through the term, we knew those people that were on those committees, and I think it was a real benefit. And I think it worked well. So I'd like to see it continue.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor Rajima. Next in the queue, I have Mary Ston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh,
Yes, you did. You turned your mic off. Can you turn Mary Stin back on? Yeah, 'cause he's next, okay. Mary Stin, you can come next in the queue. Counselor Pachariva.
Well, if it's only Mayor Easton then I'll click mine off, you talk, and I'll go next. No, you okay? Okay, through you, Madam Chair. You know what, and I think, and I don't mean to speak for him, but I think Councilor McPherson raised the ad hoc because we didn't know how we were going to select. I kind of like this new method. I mean, if it's Councilor Russell and I on the library board, I think we should interview the people on the library board because we're going to have to work for them. And there's 5 different, groups around the table, committees that, yeah, I think this is a different and a better way of doing it. So I think the question was just, those positions were due the end of the month, and how are we going to fill them? So I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. Mary Easton. Don't turn it, don't touch it. Leave it alone.
Madam Chair, I like this method as well because it is more arm's length. And I would also go so far to say is that if you're part of that group and you look at the list and you know a whole bunch of people on there, step aside and ask somebody else to do it because it is getting very, very competitive. And I think this time it's going to be even more so. And people complain. I would never sit on this committee, by the way, because I've already had letters from people. I want to sit on this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And I just informed them that I don't make that selection, and I'm not going to do that. So I think this is a nice arm's length approach. It gives you a closeness to achieve what you want, but I hope that it would give you a chance to back off if you feel that you're not going to be able to be objective. I think the selection in this term for these committees is going to be really, really, really important. Really important.
Thank you, Mary Easton. Counselor Mikulik.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just to be clear, like, these council liaison members, these 2 members, possible members, they will not be able to vote. Okay, thank you.
Counselor McPherson.
Through you, Chair Timmers, I'm just not sure what happened to the other motion. Did we vote on that, or
Not yet.
should we have?
Through you, Madam Chair. So with what's happening right now, we have a motion on the floor for the whole entire report, and there are 3 or 4 amendments that have come up, so we have to vote on each amendment individually. So right now, we're just on the ad hoc selection committee being a possibility, but no one has really put it as an amendment. So it's
But we
right now just a discussion of report.
Through you, Madam Chair, didn't we have a motion brought on the added budget for the Active Transportation Committee, and then
Yes,
we dropped that discussion
amendment.
quickly?
sorry. So that amendment was put forward to a vote, and.
Did we vote?
Yeah.
No, we didn't.
No, we had a mover for that one. We didn't vote.
It's
We
an
had a
amendment.
mover.
Yeah, so you're now at an amendment to the amendment. Okay, so now you have to vote on the amendment to the amendment, which is the ad hoc. That can get struck down. It doesn't, you have to decide what you want to do with that. Once you vote on that, if that is a loss, then you go back to Councillor Brunet's amendment.
Right.
And then you vote on that. And then once you do that, you're going to vote on the amended version. Okay? Clear as mud? I'll help you through
Yes.
it. Okay.
Okay, clear, Counselor? So
Sure.
we are just looking, we have 3 amendments. So we're on the ad hoc. It seems to me, by the discussion, and I'm in favor of doing it the new way. I sat on the ad hoc committee last term. I think having an arm's length that was mentioned is a very good idea. I think it is going to be more competitive this term, for people sitting on these committees. And I personally would not want to sit on the ad hoc committee. So I don't know if that is the consensus around the table, that we're not going to put this forward? Does anyone want to put that amendment on the table? So it is withdrawn. So that amendment is withdrawn. So the ad hoc is off the table. So now we are going to, yes. Okay. Okay. Okay, we are going to now vote on the amendment put forward by Councillor Brunet. Okay? So we have a mover and a seconder on that? Just a mover. Councillor McPherson? Is everyone clear on what we are now voting on? So we are voting on Councillor Brunet's amendment to add the $5,000 to their committee budget. All those in favor? For active transportation. And that is carried. So, with there being no further discussion. Oh. Just a second. Councilor McPherson.
Through you, Chair Timmers, I think there was also some discussion about 2 members being on active transportation and possibly 2 members on the age-friendly committee. Do we need a motion on that?
I don't recall there being a request for 2 counselors on the age-friendly. I don't think that was put on the table for the age-friendly.
I think Councilor Pachariba mentioned that as well.
For two counselors?
It's in its infancy, and it
Oh, I
would
thought,
help to get it moving, much like active transportation had that. And
okay, I'm sorry, I thought that you were speaking of active transportation. Okay, so we need someone to put an amendment on the table then, to place 2 counselors. Okay, Councillor Pachariva is putting an amendment on the table to have 2 counselor members on the age-friendly committee and 2 on the active transportation committee. Comments, questions? Mary Easton?
Given the point at which we're at in committee work, do we actually have 2 members who would be willing to sit? Because I think that might have a bearing as well. I agree with the 2 members, but are there 2 members? Is there an additional one for each committee? that would
That's a
be
good question.
interested?
I personally am interested in sitting on the age-friendly committee. I don't know, is there anyone else? Do we have 2 people that want to do it? Or Councilor McPherson too? So we do have
Great.
2 people, okay.
And Madam Chair, the active transportation as well?
And the
Do we
active,
have 2 already?
do we have 2 that would be willing to sit on the active transportation?
I'll back out of one.
Okay,
I'm gonna step off.
okay, so I think that was,
So the answer
Answers?
is 2.
that we do have 2
There's
people.
2 for each one.
For
Okay.
each one.
That was my question.
So we have that amendment. So we've clarified that we do have 2 people who would sit on each of those committees. So we are now, is there a mover? Yes. So. Okay, so active transportation, we have, you could just raise your hands. We have Councillor Russell and Councillor Pachariva. And for the age-friendly committee, oh, I'm sorry. All- Okay, all those in favor? Okay. And okay, sorry. All those in favor of Counselor Russell, please raise your hands. Okay, and that is carried. And all those in favor of Counselor Pachariva on the Active Transportation Committee, and that is carried. So moving on to the Age Friendly Committee, we have Counselor McPherson, who has expressed interest. So all those in favor of Counselor McPherson sitting on the Age Friendly Committee, and that is carried. And is there someone else that would like to? Do you, Greg? I know, but I just thought that if you, okay. So I am willing to sit on the Age Friendly. If anyone's, all those in favor? Okay, so it would be Lynn Timmers. Greg, you could have had it, Greg. Okay.
So the amendment to add 2 members and then each one, so.
Do we need someone to move that? Okay, so we need someone to move the amendment to now add 2 councillor members to the Active Transportation. Do I need to name them? Yep. Councillor Pachariva and Councillor Russell. And also to add 2 councillor members to the Age Friendly Committee, who would be Councillor Paul McPherson and myself, Lynn Timmers. I need a mover. Okay. John Pachariva. All those in favor? And that is carried. My goodness. Okay. Okay. So we are now going to be passing the main motion with all of those amendments attached to it. Do I have a mover for the motion? Mayor Easton is moving the main motion. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Okay, now if I can just figure out where I am now. Okay. Oh dear, okay. Okay. I've lost track, that took so long to get through those amendments. Okay, we are now considering item 6.4 F1-01-19, 2019 fees and charges. And I believe we will have, sorry, my computer went to sleep. I've sat here so long. Pardon? Pardon me? No. So, is it, yes. Is it Angela is speaking? Yes? Angela, if you could please come up and speak to this report? Or stay there, that's up to you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This report is just to bring forward the updated fees and charges for 2019 to better align with the budget process. Historically, these fees have come in either May or June, and actually last year we did an update in late summer to implement new fees. And so what we're doing now is bringing them forward again for a revision for the 2019 budget year.
Okay.
If you have any questions on specific items, we have SMT here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. I'll now open it to questions. Councillor McPherson?
Thank you, Chair Timmers, and I'll just kick it off and get it started, because I'm sure there's others. An easy one, when you look at the Fleming and the Fleming Arena ice rental, all the things around the Fleming Center. No, sorry, strike that. The Beansville Lions Park and the Jordan Lions Park, those fees are not the same. Pennies, but why would we not have the same fees for two significant parks within our community? Through you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, through you, to Ms. Safani.
I'm sorry, could you just point out the exact fee you were talking to on what page?
So I'm on
Page are we?
page, this is page 62 of 100. So you've got Beansville Lions Park there, small local tournaments, adult sport field rentals, and then Jordan Lions Park is on the next page, is page 63. So as I say, it's not significant, but it just, I don't get it, why we would charge more for one park versus the other.
We can look into that. My concern is it's probably due to rounding and with the taxes, so what we'll do is we'll look into that and make an adjustment.
I hate every time I hear rounding from an accountant.
Percentages cause
I had a
that
life
problem
of
for us,
that
especially
at
with the
work.
taxes.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to suggest that each member of SMT be ready to answer any questions that come up. I think it's easier that way. It's unfair probably to ask Angela to speak to a particular topic that has to do with the client department. So I'm going to ask each member of SMT to be ready to answer questions.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. The town only took over the rental and the booking stuff for Jordan Lions last year, and so the fees were a lot less than they currently are, and we've needed some time to bring them up. They will be on par, and as we go through that pricing policy exercise that we're going to go through in September of 2019, we'll be looking at all of that. But it's more about what the current users have previously paid, and a lot of the pushback that we received this year when that change happened, to have the town book and be responsible for those facilities when the Lions had previously been doing it, and the agreements that were in place with groups and reduced fees. And fees that weren't being
Yeah.
charged.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not a big, you're within dollars, so I don't see why you couldn't do it now. But anyway, I'm going to, and I know we have two questions asked. I've got two more questions, if I may, Madam Chair. One is the significant increase in some of the internment fees, and speaking specifically to double-depth burial, grandfathers only. You know, I mean, the other fees seem to be, you know, sort of in a 10% range, and then that particular fee is huge. So if there was somebody to speak to that. And the other thing, the other question for those that need to get ready, why are we only putting our ice rentals up 3%? You know, when we look at, you know, the opportunity to raise funds, you know, this is probably one of the biggest dollars that we get into our coffers. And why would we only raise our funds to stay where we are? You know, even 5% or
Okay.
6%.
Okay, thank
So
you.
those are the two questions. Thank you.
I think our CAO would like to comment.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to comment specifically on ice rates, because it was something that when we were going through the various iterations with Lincoln Minor Hockey and Jordan Minor Hockey on a new team coming to play, the whole topic of ice rates had come up. We signed an agreement or entered into an agreement with them which saw a double-digit increase at the time, but one that would be phased in over multiple years. So we will be in a position to be renegotiating with them at the end of this season, heading into next season for rates to go up again, Councillor. So we had about I think it was an 11 or 12% increase 2 years ago, and that was for a 3-season duration. And so they will be going back up, and we will be moving forward with other additional increases, because you're right, that is one where we're able to significantly generate income.
Okay, thank you. Yes, did you have more comments? Go ahead.
To the previous question on the cemeteries. So last year was the first time the cemetery fees were raised since 2002. And what we learned in this past year is, even though we raised them quite a bit, we didn't quite raise them enough. And when it comes to the care charges specifically, the Bereavement Authority of Ontario actually sets a minimum regulation that fee needs to be 30% minimum of your fee for that service. So I did catch all of those as well when staff was putting this together and had questioned about it looked to be quite dramatic, but in fact, it wasn't dramatic enough last year, which then made it look more dramatic 19 over 18. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, Shannon. Counselor Pachariva.
Thank you, Chair Timmers. I'm going to follow along Councillor McPherson's query on ice. So I've been chatting with local hockey associations, and when they do a tournament in town, typically it's used as a fundraiser. Is there any thought of developing a tournament ice rate? Because, you know, they just had the Doug Robinson, or I'm not sure what the names anymore, because I've been out of it for a couple of years, but what we charge, $185.85 an hour for ice. City of St. Catharines is $94 from ice between 8 to 5. West Lincoln is $115. The brand new Palom Arena is $110. Like these are far and few between. So you want things in town. Is there any rate of developing a tournament rate for that Friday? Because they're going out of, you can get ice in St. Catharines cheaper than you can in town, and I don't think that that's the intent.
Ms.
Through
McKay?
you, Madam Chair.
Of course.
We could certainly look at that. We're not hearing that. We're actually hearing, in some cases, we're charging too much for ice. Like you're suggesting that with the tournament rate. And in other areas, we're looking at how we can increase those fees. So, you know, a lot of these fees have been set with sort of where we are against other municipalities in the region. And are we competitive? Are we on the mid-end? Are we on the high end? Again, the pricing policy exercise that we're going to go through with Brock University that we reported to council in September, we'd be taking on this year, and we've actually got an upcoming meeting. We'll look at all of that. If you'd like us to go back and look at it sooner, we can do that. But we don't want to get too far ahead looking at a number of these changes and then undertake this pricing policy exercise in September.
Okay, good. Yes, Ms. Safani in the back, you have a comment?
One thing that I should highlight, because we have new counselors on new council now. One of the things that staff does when they're doing the fees and charges is we have a fee calculator that we've developed that really looks at the departmental costs and then projecting out what the number of submissions we would receive or bookings we would receive, and then do the fees accordingly. So we're looking for cost recovery. It's not a profit-making exercise, it's cost recovery. That's what we're mandated to do, and that's what this exercise does. So when staff are doing that, they're looking at that. Definitely, are we subsidizing some areas? Yes, but I think that's a conscious choice if it's hockey or programming, but we are looking to slowly, gradually bring those fees up and make them 100% cost recovery.
Thank you. Okay, next in the queue, I have Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd first like to refer to a previous report. I'm going to refer to it as the subsidy justification model. And I believe Ms. Safani was referring to subsidies, and I recall clearly that subsidies are justified when you have high usage. And certainly that is the situation with ice time. and that provides a balance for us, as I understand it, where you're not charging so much that people are excluded from playing the game. So I just wanted to bring that point forward. I would also like to make a comment because I'm conscious of the two questions. My comment is around the cemeteries. I think the fees may be too low. However, I'm not asking them to change. What I'm asking for is a sustainability report on cemeteries, because until this past year, it had been many years that even any evaluation of necessary property was taken into account. And quite a few spaces have been created due to staff due diligence. And so I want to make sure that we know exactly where we stand with our cemeteries so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where they are bankrupt. I've had an extensive discussion with one of our hometown people who is quite an expert in this area. And I want to add those comments because they came directly from the provincial authorities. And I want to make sure that we're not missing out on anything here. And if our fees have to go up, then they have to go up. But I want it based on a sustainability report. So I'd like to hear from what Mr. Kirkopoulos would think about such an idea. Or maybe there's another mechanism to get to the bottom of it.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the mayor's question, I mean, definitely things that we have been and are continuing to discuss with community services and our cemetery group, and something we can bring back in terms of what is the lifespan of some of our facilities and some of the things we're doing to extend that particular lifespan. So absolutely something we can come back to in the next couple of months.
Okay, so my two questions are around marijuana and inspections. And the marijuana piece is the clandestine drug lab inspection. Is there anything that would prevent us from putting that fee up to $5,000?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the mayor's question. As Mr. Fanny said earlier, the fees are really based on a cost recovery base. And, you know, we could certainly do that, but it wouldn't necessarily be justified in terms of what our actual costs have been for inspections. So.
Does that factor in when you're looking at inspections where there's an infraction that was identified at previous inspection and not remedied? Or work was requested, but it wasn't sufficiently complete? It would seem to me that $95 isn't even worth coming out of the office. Is that, again, a situation where there's some fairness factor here? But surely there should be a deterrence factor. That's my question.
I'm sorry, through the chair, is that, if you could direct me to what specific line that is?
That is on page 61 of the report, right up at the top, where an inspector determines that the work for which an inspection has been requested is not sufficiently complete to allow for proper inspection.
What?
Under the building department.
Okay. I can't find it.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
Does anyone know the page number of that? 61?
Yes, I'll defer to the building department.
Okay, through,
As you're getting tired. Through you, Madam Chair, in regards to that fee, that fee is calculated using the spreadsheet that the Finance Department prepares. So it involves the amount of staff time, basically driving back and to and forth the site and carrying out the inspection. So it's to reflect the actual cost of doing the inspection.
Okay, I must be in a vindictive mood because I find some of these fees to be really, I'd like to see them increased. Madam Chair, if I want to ask another question, do I need to wait till the end now to ask my two questions?
I don't have anyone on the queue right now, so
Okay, I have a
if you could just turn your mic on though, please.
I have a quick question to
Okay.
the CAO.
Oh, your mic is still not on. Okay,
It's on.
there we go.
Okay. To the CAO, I'm looking at the fees related to tents and temporary structures, and special occasion permits, and wondering if the special occasion permits and tents structure policies are going to prevail. Has there been any pressure for us to eliminate that? Do we think it still has value? It's not going to change these fees for this year, but is it something that may come forward in the future?
Thank you.
Well,
Here's the CEO.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Mayor. We are coming back. It was a pilot project that we were looking at with our special events policy, and so staff have committed to coming back and looking at that, and you may see a change in the future with those as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Okay,
Madam Chair.
thank you. Okay. There being no further discussion, we require a mover for the motion. I see Mayor Easton. All those in favor? And that is carried. Under confidential items, we have none. Staff remarks? Seeing none. Committee remarks? Seeing none. There being no further business, I call this meeting adjourned.